Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to introduce to you Nathan Chamakese. Big round of applause. Now, for those of you who don't know Nathan was actually a former student of mine, and like many students, Nathan became a great teacher. Nathan, one of the things that I appreciate and respect the most about you is your connection with culture. And I want to talk a bit about culture today, but maybe to start, you made a suicide attempt, I believe, in your grade 12 year. Do you mind just walking us through what took place that day? I believe it was early spring.
At that moment, it felt like I didn't want to go on anymore. I didn't want to continue with life. So basically, I climbed up on a tree kind of thing, noosed around the cord around my neck, and I dropped. And at that moment, like in the story that I had talked about, it was a, it was a, like I was put in between the two different worlds, like I said. Um, one world it was I could see all this life and all this laughter, all this life on one side, the warmth of the sun, the air, the birds singing. I could hear people on this side over here, and on the other side was the exact opposite. It was cloud. It was cold, dark. But most importantly, it was that loneliness feeling, that alone. It felt like my spirit that was. It was gonna be if things were to continue the way they were. If I actually was successful with the attempt, that's where I would stay, like a purgatory, a hell on earth kind of thing. That's how I felt inside. That's what my spirit was telling me. So I made that I made that choice to fight. Right?
And one of the things that took place that day that you made the attempt, Nathan, is that all of a sudden you found yourself on the ground, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
brothers had actually come around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find interesting is that you, as brothers, you never talked about that day until recently, right? I mean, a lot of years had passed before you actually talked about that day. Why was that? And what was that conversation like?
Maybe 15 years later or 10 years later. I can't remember the exact years, but it was quite some time later that I actually sat down with my oldest brother first. I mean, my second oldest, the one right after me. He was the one that had found me, and we talked about that day, and he was very he was very closed off about it, and I knew why, because it was gonna resurface a lot of feelings that maybe he didn't deal with it yet. Maybe he's still dealing with those feelings of why it happened and all these kind of things. But it took a lot of time for me to get that courage to actually speak about what happened. I talked to my brother briefly, my youngest brother briefly about it. He was even younger at the time, and I went home to my mom and dad, and I told them that I had to talk to them. It's just a Sunday. I just decided, I wake up in the morning. I like some smudge, and that's how I start my day. So I started my day that way. I lit some smudge, and I got into my mind. I have to have this talk. I don't realize what happened with them, what did they go through, what did they experience. Sure, it was always focused on me, but I started to do that work on myself first. I started to understand why I was going through those feelings and why I did that. And so I told them my story. I told them what I had experienced, what I had felt, what I went through, and they sat there and they're very shocked. Like it's like we had opened the door. That's what it felt like. And then they walked through that door, and as soon as they walked through the door, all their emotions came out. They cried, and my mom came and hugged me when I was telling the story, and my dad came and hugged me afterwards. And even that it was very comforting. I talk about when I first went to a sweat lodge and when they splashed the rocks, that warm steam, that's what it felt like, a warm hug. That's the exact hug that I had gotten from my parents when I was telling them. So they told me what they had gone through, what they experienced, how it affected them. And to this day, they say no matter how old your children get, there's always going to be a worry for parents. Now that my daughter's 17, she's going to be 17 years old. She's driving herself around. She's got her license. She's out there, and that's the fear. I have that same fear, and I understand what they're talking about now. And to have that discussion with them was very not. It wasn't. What's the word? Not closure, because I don't think there'll ever be closure with what I've gone through. But there's more of an understanding. There's more of not relief, but acceptance, I guess. There's more acceptance on both sides, my parents and myself, because now after 18 years, we've had that conversation about what happened. We've had that conversation of why and all this kind of stuff. So even that, it makes your heart feel a little bit better.
One of the things that I find interesting, Nathan, is there was a point when you were actually in the psych ward and your father approached the medical team and your father said that this place does not have the type of help that our son needs. Our home community can offer exactly what he needs. And that was actually the first introduction for you where you became an active participant in culture, right?
I didn't understand exactly those words. We have people back home who can help them. When you think about somebody who needs help, first of all, you think about doctors and you think about all the professionals that are out there that can possibly help a person. But, what I needed to work on was my spiritual, my emotional, my mental state, physical, all those things, when he said those things, that's what he was addressing, especially with First Nations people it's in our identity, who we are. That's the important part of understanding, I guess, to kind of address the issues within our holistic well-being. And that's what he was talking about. He talked about the elders. He talked about our ceremony, our language, our smudges, our medicine, and stuff like that. That's what he had meant. But at that time, I didn't understand that's what it was. It was that identity piece is what I was missing. Sure, I knew as First Nation, I was a Cree man, but I didn't understand, the foundation of my family is ceremony. And that's something that I took for granted. Like, yes, my parents and my grandparents went to ceremony all the time. My family was going to feasts, and they were going to sun dances, chicken dances, and all these other kind of ceremonies. But yet, I'd pick up a drum, I wouldn't know how to sing. I wouldn't know how to sing a chicken dance song, a sun dance song. And that's what it was. That's the kind of help that my dad was talking about. And I feel that's my role in this whole fight on suicide ideation and suicide mentalities and all this other things that are happening, especially with our young people, because there's like I said, that disconnect from culture, that disconnect from language, from our elders, because our elders are our most precious commodity. They are living libraries. They're a source of knowledge that, they say when one elder dies or passes on, that's years and years of history that's lost. And that's the thing with us, with Cree culture, it's not about picking up a book and learning, reading, well, this is how a sweat lodge goes, turn to page 9, that kind of thing. It doesn't work that way. Culture, with Cree culture, it's very inclusive, but yet you have to actively take part.
It's been fascinating for me, Nathan, to have a bit of insights into your life in the past few years. And what I love is that you have taken this passion and carried this message that you have all over, and you're sharing your insights. You shared it with me. Thank you for sharing it with the book, and for everyone else today. I have so much respect for the way that you walk through life, and I thank you very much for your time.
Mm-hmm. No problem, Al.
Okay, well, we'll talk to you soon, buddy. Thank you again.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Bye.